Although the Middle Ages are often defined as a time of knights, chivalry, and the development of universities along with its intellectuals, tradesmen and the expansion of their crafts were vital to daily life for those who lived throughout the Middle Ages. Most communities relied heavily on the craft masters and their businesses. The guilds were a key factor to keeping these tradesmen's businesses successful. The guild held great importance for each township on a social and professional level. In the early Middle Ages, the guild was a loosely organized group of tradesmen who formed the guild in order to protect their businesses and livelihood. Threats to these tradesmen, such as out-of-towners coming in and selling goods at a reduced price, threatened these businesses. The well-established masters of their communities banded together and would drive newcomers from their town in order to protect their crafts and their livelihood. As time went on, these guilds became more involved within the towns and their communities. It was common for the political leaders to be members of these guilds. Rules and regulations were implemented over time, and by the 11th century, each craft had a well-established guild of their own. The guild continued to be a vital part of the European economy through the 19th century. The guild officers were generally composed of masters of each craft. These officers were very powerful throughout their communities. They would frequently act as judges for guild disputes, collect guild dues, administer guild property, and would hold public office. Most guilds hosted 2 to 6 officers. These men were empowered to create statutes and enforce the provisions of existing statutes. The officers held the power to inspect shops and their masters to ensure quality workmanship along with moral stability. The officers would preside over each guild assembly along with representing their guild and its interests to the town council. In order to protect their guild shops and its members, masters would initiate any prosecutions against violators of the rules and regulations of the guild with the permission of the guild leaders. Often non-violent, shops masters, journeymen, and journeywomen who violated these rules were charged a small fee. This fee, along with the guild fees, were used to help the guild purchase the means of enforcing their statutes upon serious violators, often consisting of community outsiders. The guilds were allowed by the city and its local laws to prosecute any violator of the guild statutes by violent force if necessary. Most violators were driven from the towns and often had to travel great distances since guilds in the area were often in close contact. Apprenticeship through these guilds was the most efficient way for an underling to eventually reach the level of master for themselves. Many guild statutes were directly made for the apprentice. These apprentices would live with their craft master and were expected to follow all rules of his household and treat their master as a father. Nearly all of the apprentices would eventually gain their much desired level of master. The apprentice was also used through the guild to help define a hierarchy within the guild. The path to manhood for the apprentice took many years of careful imitation of their masters, both socially and professionally, since most were set up to eventually become masters themselves. Not as lucky as the apprentice, the journeyman would have had a much harder time of obtaining level of master. In fact, a very small percentage actually did. Journeymen were often hired as workers for the masters of the shops, and although the guild statutes stated how much a journeyman should be paid, it was often relatively low. The path to manhood for these men included frequenting taverns and consuming large amounts of alcohol. Also common among the journeymen, in an attempt to show their masculinity, would perform often acts of gang rape, which also served as a form of bonding among these men. This became such a large problem in some communities that the leaders of the community would open brothels in order to attempt to reduce these acts. Although women were not usually members of these guilds, they were important to the guild's shops and the success of them. Most wives of masters handled the accounting side of the business, along with dealing with the customers directly. In the later Middle Ages, women from the cloth industry became shop owners themselves and would hold title of masters with their own apprentices. However, outside of the cloth industry, it was very uncommon for a woman to be an owner of a shop or hold the title of master. There were few exceptions outside of the cloth industry for a woman to be a shop owner, and it was generally if she was married to a master and he passed away, the guild would often allow her to own and operate that business under close guild watch and common inspection. Journey women, much like the journey men, would have had to move often, every couple of months or couple of years, in order to find work. They were paid less than the journeymen and often had a harder time finding the work. Most would work for a master at a bake shop or in clothing shops, and it was not uncommon for the journeywomen to help with accounting and working on the retail side of other businesses. These journeywomen would usually house with whomever they were working for and were expected to help with the household cooking, cleaning, and other tasks. Journeywomen would often marry a master or an apprentice because the journeymen, the masters and the apprentice would often see their experience as highly regarded and help them with eventually running their shops of their own. The guild provided for their communities in various ways, even beyond that of its members. Although the guild allowed artisans of each craft to get together on a social and professional level, these guilds would often play a large role in community protection. In most towns, the guild members were required to serve as town watch and would be called to handle threats against their community along with neighboring communities. The fees and dues required by the members of the guilds helps to provide them with the weapons and the means necessary to perform each task. The guild helped establish a system in which tradesmen and artisans could conduct business through communal ties and statutes. It helped each member of the guild while also providing the social means and protection of their communities and the surrounding communities. Although the masculinity of each level artisan was expressed differently, each was more or less socially acceptable at the time. The guild and its economic system impacted and dominated the European economy for over a millennium. This was made possible through its